Hey, welcome back to your favorite Math 116 class. We're going to talk about multiplication and division of signed numbers. So let me move this down a little bit. There's our objectives, multiplication with two integers and zero. Let's remind you of a couple of properties. The commutative property of multiplication. So if you've got a times b is the same thing as b times a. In other words, 2 times 3 is the same thing as 3 times 2. The associative property just says, if you've got a times b times c, and if you do the b times c first, like 2 times 3 times 4, so 2 times 12, 3 times 4, be 24. Well, that's the same as 2 times 3 first, times 4, 6 times 4, 24. In other words, you can reassociate, if you will, with multiplication. So the commutative and the associative properties of multiplication hold these real numbers. Let's talk about procedures for multiplying signed numbers. So when you've got two numbers, if they have different signs, it's going to be negative. So a negative times a positive is a negative. So for an example is, if you're paying your mortgage debt, you've got a debt of $1,000 and you pay it 12 months, you're losing $12,000 paying your mortgage for your housing every month. When you have the same sign, negative times a negative, for example, would be a positive, or a positive times a positive would also be a positive. So in real life, if you have your boss paying your $1,000 mortgage, so somebody else is, right, paying your mortgage, not you, every 12 months, somebody else, your boss paying it, that's like a bonus of $12,000 for you. It's kind of like a housing bonus. So how I remember that is a good thing that happens to a good person is a good thing. A good thing that happens to a bad person is a bad thing. A bad thing that happens to a bad person is a good thing. A bad thing that happens to a good person is a bad thing, right? So that's those four scenarios. Positive times positive, positive, positive times a negative is a negative, negative times a positive is a negative, but a negative times a negative is a positive. A bad thing that happens to a bad person is a good thing. So here's some examples. Positive times a negative is a negative 63. A negative times a negative is a positive 72. Negative 4 times negative 6. Negative times a negative positive. Negative 1 times negative 5 times 6 times 2. Again, do these by hand when you're doing the homework there. Negative times a negative is a positive 5. Positive 5 times a positive 6. 30. 30 times 2, 60. And then finally 0 times negative 16. Well, 0 of anything, 0 times anything is 0, right? If I have 0, negative 16s, what does multiplication mean? Like, what does 2 times 3 mean? If you remember that, that means I have 2 3's being added together. I have 2 3's, there's 2 of those 3's being added together. Or if you want to do it the other way around, there's 3 2's. There's 3 of those 2's being added together. Either way, it's 6. Well, if you've got 0 of these negative 16's being added together, you got 0. You got nothing. So same thing for dividing. Positive over a positive will end up being a positive. A positive number over a negative ends up being a negative. A negative over a positive would be a negative. And a negative over a negative is a positive. And if you have 0 in your numerator, if you're taking 0 divided by 7, that's 0. Right? If you're eating 0 out of 7 slices, right, you're eating nothing. Whereas if you're taking 7 and you try and divide it into 0 pieces, impossible. This is undefined. Okay, so here's some examples. 42 divided by negative 7. A positive over a negative is a negative. Negative 39 over a negative 3. A negative over a negative is a positive. Negative 72 divided by 9. Negative over positive is a negative. 108 divided by 4. We could do this longhand if you want to. 4 goes into 10 twice. 4 goes into 28, 7. And no remainder there. So 27. Positive over positive. Negative over a negative, 119 divided by 7 goes once. It goes 7 times. So 17, positive 17 on that. 0 divided by anything, 0. 6 divided by 0, undefined. Can't do that. Okay, on these ones, I'm going to go ahead and multiply negative 6 times 3 to negative 18 over negative 9. Remember, a negative over negative is a positive. So 18 divided by 9 is 2. Down here, you got a negative times a negative on the positive on the top, so those will become positive. That'll be a positive number. On the bottom, you got a negative times a negative. So I'm going to make those positive. And before I multiply, I'm just going to go, well, gosh, I know that 24, here's one way you can think about that. As 24 is 12 times 2. And on the bottom, you got 2 and a 12. Well, 12 over 12 is gone. 2 over 2 is gone, so you're left with that 3 right there. Okay. Alright, see you next time.